The hour of 6:02 having arrived, we'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission to order. First order of business for us tonight, we might want to just go ahead and do some introductions of who we have here with us. We also welcome our newest commissioner, Mr. Lewis Waterbuck. And I'm pretty sure there's a different article that I should be using other than Mr. I'm not sure if that's correct. No, okay, all right. So we'll just start down at this end and just introduce ourselves to Lou.
Good evening. I am Doreen Wilbur. Welcome.
Thank you, Doreen. Nice to meet you.
Hey Lou, nice to see you again. Emily Callahan.
Emily.
Lou, I'm Tawanda Stallworth. It's a pleasure to bring you on board.
Hi, Tawanda. Nice to see you.
Hey, and I'm Andrew Razanoskis, or Raz, just not to be confused with Raz. Great to meet you.
Hi, Raz.
So, Lou, welcome. We are missing Raf Donaldson, who's en route, and Commissioner Tristan Milazzo is unable to be at this meeting. So, again, welcome, and I'd like to offer you some time to introduce yourself to the commission and all of that.
Okay, thanks very much. Again, appreciate your having the confidence in me to appoint me to the commission. Most of you probably read my bio. I don't like talking about myself so much, but I'll say I'm a long time former resident of Carlisle. My family has been in borough residence for about 135 years or so. I'm very proud of that. I moved away in 1979 after graduating from Carlisle Senior High School, done a number of things. I currently live in Northern Virginia, just outside D.C., just retired from the Defense Intelligence Agency, and will be coming home to Carlisle next year. So found the commission a wonderful opportunity to give back to the community and move the borough forward. You're very aware, all of you are very aware of the numerous challenges that face our country. I think many of those have their origins in the small towns and boroughs. There isn't a lot of attention given to that. A lot of attention goes to the big cities and the like, and for obvious reasons. But certainly, small towns, boroughs, and the like are, in my view, the backbone of our country and our nation, and have been from the very beginning. And moving forward into this new world requires some work in many of these small towns and cities, particularly where there are the disadvantaged, the disenfranchised, and even if they're not disadvantaged or disenfranchised, the attitudes of folks that make them believe that they are. So this was an opportunity, I think, for me to give back, to help, and to be of some assistance to borough leaders as well as the commission. So I appreciate that, and thanks for your indulgence. Again, I don't like to talk all about myself, but if you have any specific questions, I do have some aspirations, other aspirations in the future, but they all are based in the Carlisle area.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I'll open it up for the commissioners to ask any questions or get to know yous or retorts.
No questions, just excited to have you.
Great, thank you. I'm approachable, so ask anything. Sometimes I put on my game face from my Pentagon days, and I sometimes want to tone that down. So don't be shy if you do have any questions. I'm perfectly willing to answer them.
And I should add, we do have Lou's contact information, and I'll make sure that as he's included in the distributions, we'll make sure we have all of that contact information as well. And also to note, as a matter of record, that should be definitely in the record, is that Mr. Waterbuck is a Washington football team fan, and we welcome him back to the borough in that regard as well.
Deny.
Well, thank you very much. I was fortunate to actually work for the Washington Redskins for 4 years, and the beginnings of that started right there in Carlisle when they would come to Dickinson College for summer training camp. I still remember the day the assistant principal of the high school said, "Hey, Lou, I got a job for you." And that set me on a really interesting journey. And again, very appreciative of that experience.
Maybe as you return to Carlisle, they will also return to Carlisle.
From what I can gather, probably not, but I wish they would. I wish they would.
We'll keep that on Susan's to-do list as a matter of priority. Just keep reaching out. Great, thanks.
Excellent. The next item of business on our agenda is the approval of minutes. The minutes were put in your packet as usual. If there are no proposed amendments, I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I also move.
A second.
Okay. Member Razanauskas moved. Member Wilbur seconded. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved. I guess I'll stay on the mic here. Next up for discussion items is a report out from the research working group. We had a really good meeting last week. It was sort of our first opportunity to check in after figuring out how we were going to manage the departure of Kendall Isaac. And we were able to really connect with Lou, who attended our meeting. So we began by filling Lou in on what our working group had done so far. And Lou, jump in anytime your recollection of the meeting doesn't accord with mine. But I would say that we accomplished three pretty big things. First, we provisionally approved a template for our final report from the commission. So Member Milazzo presented a template from another report she had been working on and asked us for our feedback on the layout and organizing the report in the way that this other report was organized. And the working group gave her provisional approval to go ahead and work with that template and adapt it for our use. And I think we were excited about the prospect of kind of having the shape of the thing and figuring out how we're going to fill it out. We obviously still have a lot of questions. We discussed some questions about data collection and data transparency within the borough of Carlisle. For example, the police department. So we identified some questions that we would like to ask the department heads, for instance, Chief Landis, about how data is kept and how data is made transparent to the public. So we will begin reaching out to individuals and organizing meetings to ask those questions and just engage the borough leadership in our process and let them know what we're interested in finding out. And we intend to report back as we collect that information. So that was number 2, identification of the questions and the data and the various borough departments that we're interested in speaking with. And then kind of 1.5 things, actually. So the third thing is we began to discuss parameters and criteria for establishing a peer aspirant group for the borough. So what cities ought we be comparing ourselves to, and how do we identify those cities, and what information are we looking for? And that's a somewhat complicated question because there are some cities that on the face of it may not look very comparable, but may be doing something in a particular unit that is something that we could scale for the borough. And we left the meeting with agreement that we would begin to look at methodology and resources for identifying that group. And in the follow-up to that meeting, we have been doing that. And then the 0.5 thing is we began to look at a case study of business development in the borough. So suppose we are thinking about eventual recommendations that we'd like to make to the borough. We began to ideate about business development opportunities for the historically disenfranchised and underrepresented. What are other communities doing? How might we restore trust in some of these communities? And what tools are available to municipalities to try and energize business development? That was a lot of me talking. Lou, Raph, anything to add?
I think that was perfect. I think you covered everything. I was most interested in that peer aspirant piece. So, Emily, as you may have seen, I sent you. I apologize, I sent it late, but I did send you an email of a potential methodology, or at least one methodology that we might adapt to advance that particular idea, which I'm very supportive of.
I saw that email and I'll respond to you. And I'm thank you for the energy and the input.
It all sounded good to me. That was a great summary of our conversation.
Any questions from our members who are not in the research group about what we're up to?
Just curious, did you document it that we could access this?
We don't have any working documents yet. So the document that Tristan shared, I don't want to say proprietary, that's too strong, but it's not a document that she was just showing us the template. If it was organized like this, what would you think? So I think once she has it adapted for the TRC, then we'll have it available to put in our Drive folder. And each group does have a folder that I think is accessible to the whole commission, but I'll check on that.
So that's a really good question, and I can't access anything right now for some reason. I'm having some internet trouble. But in your research working group folder, is it like just blurbs about just kind of where you are? And the only reason why I'm saying that is if we come up with something in community engagement, could we just look at that document real quick and say this is where they are on that, and maybe inform our work?
To be honest with you, that's kind of me recalling scribbles on a legal pad, what you just heard. So Nicole, we're relying on you for the written record of that. But soon, I think now that we have this kind of initial wild ideation style, period down, I think we'll begin to have documents that have that content in there. And yes, it'd be great if the community engagement group were checking in and using all the functions to communicate with us in document. So feel free to comment and ask questions and make suggestions.
Just a maybe logistical question. Is there anything in the Sunshine Act that leaves us liable if we don't capture that in some format in minutes, or you know what I mean?
I don't want to step in and pretend to have Kendall's expertise, but my understanding is that if you and I meet for lunch and we ideate about things that they're doing in Bethlehem or Allentown or Altoona, and we kind of say, it'd be kind of neat if the borough did that, let's bring that up at the next working group meeting. If that goes nowhere, we're under no obligation to disclose that to the public. It's when things are coming up for a vote, is my understanding, that all of the related documents are right to knowable.
Yep.
You're the lawyer now.
That is my understanding, but there are definitely. I also understand that generally our purpose in forming the working groups is that since we don't have a quorum, and these are not discussing votes, they're just discussing possibilities of things that might get proposed to the larger group, that's not the kind of thing that requires a public notice and the rest.
No, and that's helpful. That was my understanding too. I just want to make sure we're keeping it in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about the peer aspirant cities. I look forward to hearing more about that. I think that could be some opportunity for some information gathering. And then I'll also just add the All America Cities award that the borough received a few months ago. Some of those cities are working on similar stuff, such as TRC, so they might be a good resource, or could at least point you to resources. I'm looking at you, Evanston. So.
Evanston did come up in our conversation.
I do have a good list of contacts too
That's
Excellent.
helpful.
from the process.
Please.
To that point, I was thinking the same thing with respect to the All American Cities. I didn't have enough time, which is, I shouldn't say it that way. I was not able to find what the criteria was for that award, although I did follow the whole as it unfolded and was awarded and such. But if maybe offline, someone could point me to what was the criteria. That might dovetail, or we might be able to crosswalk some of that into what we're looking at for a peer aspirant.
Stephanie, are you mic'd?
I am now.
Oh, great.
I can send you our application, and I can send you the criteria that
Thanks.
we based the
Okay,
application
that
on.
would do it. Yeah, thank you very much.
I apologize for missing, obviously, part of the conversation about what the research working group did. Was there any talk about us having the commission, that is, having an executive session in order to discuss the question about the borough agencies that we might like to discuss with and not? And was there any discussion about such a thing?
There was not discussion about such a thing.
Sounds like we're having a discussion about that.
So it came up in the research working group that we want to talk to, perhaps talk to certain agencies about the collection of information, and we had some thought about how we might want to go about that in ways that kind of preserve the certain kind of confidentiality and other kinds of reasons why there's certain ways that we want to engage with certain borough agencies and some divisions. And so we wanted to kind of talk as an entire group, but not just as the research working group, about how we want to do that. But because of the need for sensitivity, it seems like we should, this is an executive session type of discussion, and it's something that must be decided by the full group and not just the research working group, so it seems to me. So I was just wondering, should we think about having an executive session at some point for that purpose? And when should that take place?
I need another refresher on what entitles us to go into executive session. So if you're discussing personnel matters, you're permitted to go into executive session, but to inform the conversation, I'd like to know more about that. Does anyone off the top of their head, or based on documents that were shared with us earlier, have any recollection of? Please.
You may go into executive session for personnel related matters,
I'm s-
litigation.
I'm sorry, Susan. Since we have Lou on Zoom,
Yes.
is there any way, can Susan be on camera? So that, okay, all right.
You won't see her on camera.
Sorry. Okay. Sorry about that.
Not a problem. Yes, personnel, litigation, real estate. And litigation can be potential litigation or active litigation.
My recollection is that there was a larger set of reasons, like there were like 7.
Those are the general 3 that
I
we
see.
operate under with respect to Borough Council and the Borough Solicitor. There may have been others that Deputy Mayor Schultz may have shared with you that I'm not privy to. But those 3 I am very well aware of.
I think education was one of them because I can remember saying something about FERPA. And anything that would be protected under confidentiality with an attorney, I think is the other which maybe just kind of falls under this litigation umbrella.
Yeah, so I think that the larger answer to Emily's question is we don't know the full answer to the set of things. I think that's easily findable since it is public law, and if you'll permit me, I'll actually just go look that up.
Well, I think we have, I mean, I think these reasons are enough to enter into executive session if we know that, right? So, and not to make this super elementary, but so discrimination is illegal. So if we are inquiring with departments about the ways in which there may or may not have been discrimination within their entity, that could fall under the umbrella of potential litigation. So I think that clears us for executive session. Now, I don't know how to actually have an executive session.
I don't know if there's any particular rules. My understanding about just what executive session requires is just that it doesn't require that the meetings be public, that it's not required that they're public, and it doesn't require that they be recorded, or that there be public notice. That's my understanding. But I don't know if there's other usual things that are done.
You weren't proposing that we go into executive session tonight. Okay. So I think what we could do is that the research group can add to their agenda between this meeting and next, defining, getting clarity on this question and defining what about the questions we have make them appropriate for executive session so that we're all absolutely clear on why we're doing that. Anything else for research group? Please.
Just because I did kind of find out what the things are, because I remembered rightly that there were 7 things. And so I'll just kind of mention them for the purpose of the record so we remember them going forward. The 7 reasons for holding executive session is 1, for discussing personnel, 2, for information strategy regarding collective bargaining, 3 is for real estate, 4 is for consulting with an attorney. 5 is discussing agency business, which would, if conducted in public, violate lawful privilege or lead to the disclosure of information or confidentiality protected by law. I think that might be what we're suggesting. That might be one of those things. Number 6 is discussing certain academic matters, and that's really limited to institutions of higher learning, so not us. But 7, I think, is maybe even more relevant. Discussing certain public safety issues, if disclosure of the information discussed would reasonably likely to jeopardize or threaten public safety, preparedness, or public protection. I think that may be exactly what we have in mind.
Excellent, thank you. Nevertheless, I think we'll think more on that as a research group and really get even more clarity on why we're proposing executive session.
Do I understand that to mean then that we would schedule an executive session between now and the next meeting?
I think it depends on how prepared we are to move forward with the things that we'd like to discuss at that point.
Got it. Thanks.
You bet. Okay, are we ready to hand it over to community engagement? The floor is yours.
As always, let me know whatever I'm skipping or misremembering from our meeting. If it does help too, in the community engagement working session folder on the Google Drive, we do have this. It's 11/4/2021 working group is the title. So if you want to see the notes, you can reference it there as well. I guess just if I were to break this into 2 parts, some things to consider, just general, and then some things that we'd like to consider more specifically acting on that we wanted to get the input from the full committee. So just a couple general things we discussed to think on. Member Milazzo could speak to this one better, but I guess the 18th is Home from School, the Children of Carlisle. And she just asked, could we encourage the community to come out for the event? So I think it would be nothing more than us making a public statement of support but possibly something we would consider doing. And unfortunately, I don't have a ton more information on that one. Other things to consider. One thing that was suggested is a town hall, or the initial town hall that was in January of 21. Do we want to consider almost a 1 year anniversary town hall session for the community as an update, how it's going, for our committee? So that's not something that we're proposing we act on or even vote on tonight, but just something that was brought up for consideration. The other was potential mixer for the community, something where all borough commissioners could get to know the community. I think this was extended beyond just the TRC, but for some of the other committees as well. So again, something to think on, but not something we put a hard and fast date to. Any questions before I go to the next part?
Just adding, I believe we said that when we have meetings with various groups, we would attempt to change the venue each time.
Yes.
So, that we are in someone else's comfort space, safe space. We want those of us who engage with us, of course, or those who engage with us to really feel a sense of comfort and feel like they can, speak their truth in surroundings that make them most comfortable.
Yes, thank you. So the other piece then, this is what we're real excited about, because we want input from the committee and something potentially for us to vote on and to move forward. We last spoke in our last full committee meeting about a thinking about race Thursday, having an open mic forum. So we've put together a little more structure around this proposal, thinking that we'd like to make the first option December 9th, and consider adding a January date as well. So some action steps we could take if the group feels this is a good way to proceed would be working to draft a press release, having some sort of outline with prompt questions, and putting together what would probably be a hybrid. We're thinking a hybrid in-person and Zoom meeting, and I think to Ms. Wilbur's comment about changing it up, but at least the first one being here in Carlisle in the Borough Hall. So is that something we would vote on, and is that something, or at least I'll open up the discussion.
I think we had talked about wanting to make the first 3 dates a part of the press release, and then using Borough Hall, using the conference room for those first 3 dates. So that way they're kind of set until we can kind of get a following. And then as we're invited out to other locations to set up for our Thinking About Race Thursdays, to do that. And then the January date for that would be the town hall date.
Yes.
Right? So we're looking at December 9th, January 15th, and February 10th.
That's correct. And I would just add, I don't think I mentioned the time, but we said 6 to 7 p.m., which actually coincides, I believe the Borough Council meets at 7. So we thought an hour would be, at least for the first few especially, a good time frame to hopefully attract some attendees.
So, and it would be like an office hours sort of concept, where we would have questions and prompts and sort of an outline to engage folks who either come in person to meet with us or that pop in the Zoom to meet with us, get permission to record that information, and really just, making it inviting and as accessible as possible. Making it as accessible as possible.
I think
I was just trying to. I was going to ask a question to kind of understand where this fits in our larger mission. And so the idea, this is a way of gathering information. That's its primary focus. We're going to have these kind of for that kind of purpose of having a way for some people to kind of engage with us before or maybe in addition to finding other ways of kind of collecting information more systematically.
Yeah, so thanks for asking. I think part of where some of this has grown out of is that I receive information just personally about things that are going on, and it seemed a little counterintuitive to be doing this work in a very methodical and systematic way. And then at the same time, there are real time issues and concerns that are happening in the borough in real time. So, do we necessarily have to wait until the end of 2022 to make a recommendation about something that was shed, where light was shed on it in the fall of 21, right? How can we capture this information, let folks know? Like, I think we're able to walk and chew gum at the same time, so that, yeah, we're not only information gathering, but we're also engaging with the community in a way that lets them know that we're here to try to help some of these issues and concerns that are existing in the borough in real time.
Agreed wholly. And I would just add, I think one of the bodies of work that this subcommittee could take on is to build a little more structure around that. So what would some of those prompt questions be? What would that look like? Before we went too far down that path, though, we wanted to bring this idea before the whole committee.
I think we also have to consider that what this is going to ultimately do is build trust. I think if we start to really form relationships with different groups within the community, and we truly listen, and document their concerns, and then later discuss them, and then put them into plans or put them into suggestions for the borough, I think that ultimately does build a trust and an understanding that we're here to make change, so to speak.
I do have some concern about setting the precedent that we are going to make recommendations in real time, since we're sort of charged with more systemic problems. So I certainly understand the need to build trust and be responsive, but I also don't think it's unreasonable for this group to say, we're collecting that piece of information and cataloging it, and putting it into a broader conceptual framework that will ultimately generate recommendations that we think will prevent things like that from happening again. Because I have a concern that as things like that come up, it will be things like sort of individualistic interactions. Individual had a negative interaction with this individual who was an agent of the borough, and that's a problem. And I of course we don't want people to have interactions like that, but I don't think we should be promising that we'll do something about that. What we'll do is collect that and see if there's a pattern there and make more system level recommendations.
Yeah, and I think that's where we set forth guidelines. I don't think it's the intention is that we sit here and we're a complaint taking agency, so to speak. Now, that being said, of course, if something were to come to our attention that needs immediate attention, of course we would communicate that to the appropriate sector, but I think that's the ball is in our court, so to speak, to set the parameters, to really communicate what we want to do.
Yeah, and I hear that hesitation, like I hear that reservation, but I think both things can be true, right? So I think there is a way that the work of this commission happens in real time, and it happens at a research and systemic level. So if there's an interaction or something that has been harmful where someone in our community has been harmed, I think we have a role, we have a responsibility to to do something if that information is made aware to us. But I also think that if once that anecdotal
Mm-hmm.
situation is taken care of, that does sort of pave the way for this to be part of the systemic report, right? This is part
Yeah.
of the larger picture, both things.
And that's kind of where you kind of really hit it there, because I think that if we have conversations and we start to hear a pattern, then we could even say to the research group, okay, this is what we've been seeing. Is there a deeper history here? Is there, something more that we need to research? So I agree with what you've said. Ron?
Yes, if I may just jump in real quick. We did sort of touch on this in the research group meeting that we had with respect to how how do we go about collecting data? Clearly, any recommendations that we make that are in my view, of a systemic nature, foundational nature, long-term nature, have to be predicated on having sufficient data, not anecdotal data, but data that actually you can rely on for the long term. We mentioned, or we kicked around the idea of a survey, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily the way to go, or we have the time to do a survey. But I did notice that Mr. Hicks, in his work with the reusable plastics and the like, recycling and the like, as part of his work, there was a Facebook survey which I took that asked some fundamental questions, which I believe he must be using in some sort of data collection or acquisition approach. But they were really fundamental questions. They didn't really get to this happened to me once, or this happened to me, and I want to tell you about it. But it was more something that you can kind of hang your hat on. I'm still thinking about that. I'm not suggesting that a survey is the way to go because there's time and other things, but certainly this discussion prompted me to just make that comment. Thanks.
Yeah, I have two thoughts. One about the survey thing, and one about what we were just talking about. So, about what we were just talking about, I similarly have the worry that we've kind of had this conversation before. That I don't want us to get involved in constant putting out of fires, because I think then we're not going to get very much work done on the more systematic tasks. So I just worry about um, will responding to each of these types of problems, as opposed to just documenting the problems, will that kind of divide attention? Because while walking and chewing gum at the same time is a possibility, it does seem to me spending a bunch of time meeting with officials and finding out information, that takes time. And if we're constantly trying to figure out how are we going to address this particular problem this particular person brought forward, that's time too, and time is limited. So I just worry about how, I guess it depends on what this actually looks like. If we have one person or two persons per month who have some problem that has to be solved, or they want to have solved immediately, that's one thing. If we have 10, I just wonder. So that's the first thought. But the second thought is I actually think, in terms of thinking about this as a way of collecting anecdotal information, I actually think that's helpful too. As I think about the report that we might eventually write and issue, the kind of hard numbers and data is helpful, but to be compelling, something personal is often needed too, and we may not get that from the numbers alone. We're going to need to put a human face on things, and one of the other hats that I wear is on the faculty senate at Penn State, and one of the kind of audits that we've done related to kind of race and faculty does that thing of both finding systematic trends, but also looking to look at particular faculty members who can then put a face to like what was that experience that you had. And so I think that this really does play a role, this collecting of anecdotes. I think it really can be really helpful. I just worry about the time it might take to actually respond to those anecdotes, just being detracting from other goals.
Yeah, I definitely hear that concern. I think maybe even a function of our subcommittee could be, or sorry, a working group could be making sure we outline that in a very precise way. So we make sure that the expectation is not, I come in here for a thinking about race Thursday and I'm going to be like, my problem will be solved. But there's definitely power to that anecdotal piece. And even in our bylaws early on, we said, providing opportunities for individuals impacted and traumatized to share their stories and experiences. So I think even if we were to have a session where we take no tangible action from, there could still be a lot of value from that.
I was just thinking about the survey piece again, and I know time is an issue, but when I work with young people and I really want to be able to narrow something down or figure out what is actually going on. I think the survey is such a useful tool. And I even think about that with the students I work with on a daily basis. Like, I want them, to be able to have a voice, and they may not come to a meeting, but I could probably offer them some pizza and get them to, fill out a survey or give some feedback. And I think with all of the experience that we have up here, and of course other sources that are out there, I think we could develop just a quick survey that would help identify some of the issues that they encounter on a daily basis.
Just to keep us moving, I'm wondering, would it make sense for this working group to put some more airtight language around this?
I don't know that it can be airtight. I think what's important is that the public and those who meet with us have reasonable expectations about what's in our power to do, and that they have reasonable expectations about what we recommend as individuals and what this commission does. There may be things that someone shares with me where I think, you should call the police about that. That's harassment. There may be things that people share with me where I think, well, that's something that I would report to a bias incident reporting mechanism. Does the borough have one of those? We may very well discover, no, they don't have that. That's perhaps something that would appear in a recommendation. So I can say to the individual who reports, say, harassment, as an individual, that's something that you could report to the police if you chose to do that. And also, I've collected information from you, and I'm going to see if that fits in a broader pattern that might inform a recommendation this committee makes. As for the person who has something that doesn't rise to the level of criminal action against them, I might say, that is something that should really change. I wonder what bias interrupters the borough has in place. Turns out, none. I'm making this up. I don't know what's actually in place. Then I might circle back to that person at the end and say, because of what you shared and what I heard from other people, we made the recommendation that the website include a confidential bias reporting mechanism so that someone at the borough is getting all that information. Thank you for sharing. So we're accountable to that person eventually, but we do have to set the expectation that for some folks who come to talk to us, we're going to have to validate, but say, there's nothing right now concrete that we can do, but we are still accountable to you. This is filling out something that we plan to do later. So that's not airtight to me. is my issue. Is just how do we express reasonable expectations without saying it's a rigid set of rules?
Well, I think we start with the article that we had mentioned. And, you know, in the press release, we clearly define what it is we're doing, what we're looking for, what the expectations are. And of course, we can always offer resources. Like, you know, they could ask any one of us about resources that are available, but we just make it clear as to, you know, what the short term versus long term goal is. And I think that will give them an opportunity to really understand.
And thinking about what the working group might do next, I'm just wondering, is the timeline a bit short? Because I was thinking, might it be a thing that the rest of us want to see, like what the potential press release might look like? And
No,
then,
wait a minute, Rap. You either gonna have to trust us to be a working committee or not. Now, I'm gonna give you that much. I mean, at some point we gonna have to. I mean, just to move things along. I mean, the whole group only comes together once a month. So if we wait until a press release is drafted and wait another month to share it, we've lost almost 2 months, because then we're looking at January.
Well, I think it can be shared via email and whatnot. I think, you know, if that's what you're suggesting, you know, I think that all of us will keep open lines of communication. Definitely. And once we draft it, we'll send it to you. You give us feedback, and what we'll just do is say, hey guys, you know, we have a deadline. Could you give us some feedback by Friday, whatever the date may be? We'll make changes. Final draft will be delivered to you on this date. Go. How's that sound?
yeah, that seems fine to me. I mean, the other thing I'd say is like the commission is going to be in place for another 12 months, right? So it seems like even if it took until January, it's going to be in place for another 12 months. But a fast email process is not in tension with what I was suggesting.
Well, and I'll just add, I'm certainly just speaking personally, so I'm not speaking on behalf of the working committee, but I'm not opposed to moving it back. I think we actually deliberately stopped where we did in our working group because we said let's touch base, let's calibrate with the whole committee before we go forward. Some of the things you guys bring up are excellent considerations that I think we maybe hadn't thought all the way through. So,
And
I
we
personally,
also, oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
No, we also consider the holidays too. That's the other thing, because no one is going to, of course, want to meet over the holidays. We have different obligations. So yeah, I agree. I think I definitely want to, you know, move forward with at least a press release. I'd at least like to, and I'm just speaking for myself, accomplish, you know, one of the meetings. And that puts us into that December range. So that does give us still some breathing room, some time to communicate back and forth. So I think that's a good compromise.
And these are called Thinking About Race Thursdays. I suppose one concern I have is while I think we all expect that race-based discrimination, harassment is going to be the primary thing that we deal with, might we want to create space for other marginalized groups to share experiences that they've had with the borough?
I think that's an excellent idea. I'm knee deep in my coursework on DE&I, and I think if we start, you know, just by really offering those definitions, you know, of diversity, equity, and inclusion. These are the groups, you know, that we want to include in the discussion. This is not about shutting anyone out. So I think definitely we put forth those definitions. And again, I think another place for that is on our website, in the press release. I think we could definitely update our website so that it's not just about race, but it's about gender, it's about ethnicity, it's about sexuality, gender preference, all of that. That's an excellent point. So what if we said thinking about diversity, equity, and inclusion? Thursdays.
I think
No,
I love the alliteration though. Thinking Thursday, thinking about something Thursday. I think that this is a really difficult strategic question, actually, because what you call it sends a message to the folks who read about it about who's welcome and who isn't. So there's already gatekeeping built into how we title things. Who is our target audience? Who do we want to make sure feels comfortable there, and what language do we speak to take that first step towards making them feel more comfortable?
Yeah, I mean, I think of just a typical classroom that all of us have been in, and there will be representations of so many different groups. So yeah, I think for our working group, it's important for us to kind of look at that title, thinking about Race Thursday.
Well, I think it is. I'm sorry.
Oh no, please.
I think it is race. I mean, I think that that's what we're here for, is race. And while there are certainly other vulnerable or marginalized subgroups in the borough, I think there are already other commissions that are slated to do that work for some of these other groups. But I just want to add, I had a meeting today with someone, and with someone, a borough adjacent employee, and really had to flesh out this notion of Carlisle having an experience of being two different locale, right? So there are two very different experiences as a resident of this borough. And I think for me, one thing that I know to be true is that people are actively, currently, right now, being traumatized and being victimized because of white supremacy and because of a lack of commitment to anti-racism across the board in this region, right? And that's a very real thing for me. So I think that's part of what my weight is on this, is that folks who are closest to the pain many times may not give a good cookie about DE&I, right? They may not even care about the final product or report. But what they do care about is the treatment that they themselves, their family members, are receiving while residents in this borough, while living here, while interacting with the borough and all of her departments. It's hard for me thinking about the town hall in January of this year and the information that was shared and what we know to be true about this borough, for us to not take any and every opportunity to hear what anybody has to say about any of it. Because it's not clean. It's not packaged well. It may not show up well. It may not smell well. It may not sound well. But we are here because we have to hear and deal with what is happening. And I think for us to not take every and any opportunity to do that does a disservice to this borough.
That's well stated, and I think that's why the stories and the anecdotal evidence is so important. Like, I guess my fear is I don't want anyone to ever walk away from one of our listening sessions, if you will, thinking, well, it said we can't do X, Y, Z. Not that we would write it in those terms, but I guess my fear would be that someone would feel that they shouldn't share something because it doesn't fit the mold. It doesn't go along against, according to the guidelines.
Well, and I mean, we also, if we're looking at it from a practical and logistic standpoint, right? We're going to be right there across the hall an hour before Borough Council is sitting here. Any one of the counselors or Susan or anybody is welcome to hang out in that space. And if someone comes in and makes a complaint or says something about something that they experienced in the borough or with a department and Susan is there, Susan may want to follow up on that.
Mhm.
But that doesn't mean that it can't be part of the report.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that it's not part of the larger picture. But I just, and I can remember prior to this feeling like we can't be chasing fires or we can't, and I hear that. But I also know that we would not be here if the building was not on fire.
And I just want to just bring up something that we discussed in our working group, that's why it's also so important, or it is so important for us to also be offsite, because I can't remember, and it may have been Tristan, who said that there will be some individuals who don't want to walk into this building because maybe they have had a negative experience. So that's why it's also so important for us to meet on their, in their home space. So I just wanted to reiterate that as well.
I agree with much of what was shared here, but where I'm having difficulty, Tawanda, is tracking. So, are you arguing that we should keep the event, including the title of the event, focused on race, or is that what you were arguing in support of that?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess my only pushback is that there are going to be many people who don't just check that box. Yeah.
So, both about the putting out fires and about the what should the focus be. I think there's a reason why we had a mission statement and our initial statements and the the original purpose for the borough and the purpose for the commission. And I understand the purpose of the commission to be race focused. That's what I think thinking about race might be the way that we do things. But similarly, I also understand that we have a mission statement where we say we're going to do a bunch of things, and I just worry that if what we said we were primarily going to be doing is thinking about how to both hear information from people in the borough and then try to make progress on issues, more systematic issues about housing, education, and policing, I just worry that how do we get to those three huge areas if there's a bunch of other things that are happening that we're responding to regularly. And so I just feel like there are these kind of interesting and cool ideas, but I'm just when are we going to turn to those other things? Who is actually working, say, specifically on the question of are there bias reporting mechanisms? I've not heard anyone say that that's one of the things that they're specifically going to do. And so it's just I'm just worried that we're forgetting the conversation that we had a couple months ago, trying to identify there's a bunch of different stuff that we could do. We said we narrowed down what we were going to do, and then I worry that we forgot that narrowing and that we're going to go broader. And I think that might even be related to this question about race. This is a commission about racial reconciliation, about kind of historically discriminating against racial minority groups, including indigenous folks, and that's what we're supposed to be doing. And so I like to kind of cabin things so that we can do our best job on that. And maybe one of the recommendations is maybe there needs to be some group that talks about sexual minorities and LGBT folk, and maybe there needs to be a group that's about all sorts of other aspects of identity. I think that's a really great thing. But I thought that there was something a little bit more narrow that we're supposed to focus on, and I guess we should focus on it.
No, I'm reading. I went back to our old document, and it was a working document, but it says, we believe our work must be actively anti-racist. We know we must practice patience and engage, in difficult dialogues with open heart and open mind. And then when it went over the values, racial justice, equity, transparency, healing, safety, community, solidarity, wholeness, authenticity, grace, forgiveness, and I could go on. So yeah, I thank you for kind of bringing us back to that document, because it is easy to really think, oh, this group and that group and this group. So thank you for bringing me back to what we had initially stated.
And I don't want to get too hung up on our response to everyone. I think I guess I just keep going back to, I think there's very little risk in us just inviting people in for a conversation, just so long as we set the parameters that, look, we can't promise that we can take action on everything, but I think the sooner we can start just saying, hey, I'm here to listen, and really reaching out to connect with the community, the better. So I'm still not married to that December 9th as a start time, but I think we should either proceed with that or proceed with the understanding that our working group will address some of these questions and then bring to the next, maybe even before the next meeting, if we can send it out via email, send our package of response, if you will.
Still playing catch up, so I'm doing a lot of listening, learning a lot about where you are. Just a comment, and it's a comment I made in the working group as well. I do know something of the community with respect to attitudes to such commissions like the TRC, and frankly, this isn't the first one. And I know for sure that there is a large segment of the community that has given up on initiatives like this, largely because though their concerns are given a voice, there is the perception that there is nothing actionable or nothing changes. So though I understand and agree, one cannot promise, oh, we will fix that problem, we'll take care of that and get right back to you. There has to be an element, and again, the research group I know is focused on this as well. There has to be an element where there is something that is actionable that can be given to the borough or be recommended to the borough such that progress can be made more than simply, I feel your pain, and the airing of grievances. We've been through that, believe me, I know, for years, since I was a kid. There were these forums, and now there are a lot of folks that have told our young folks that
So it sounds like there's agreement that this should be race focused and that should be in the title.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Okay, so there's consensus around that. There's consensus around sharing the press release with the entire commission before it's forwarded to the press. And we're still going to stick with the target date of December 9th.
I'd like to. The later we go, I don't, does it even matter?
Yeah,
The-
we're still reporting it.
Okay. The later we go, I think the more difficult it will be to have people come in.
Okay.
Could we maybe go, and this might be risky, so tell me if no. Could we go on the contingency that we'll go with December 9th as long as we get email confirmation from every commissioner that we're happy with the press release, like the proposed press release?
That's fine, yes.
I have no objection to that. Do you have a proposed locations you're considering? Or that's still under discussion?
Are you mean for the first one?
Mm-hmm.
The first one will be here.
Will be
I think
here.
yes.
Okay.
And then we will, talk to other groups and ask them to extend invitations if they'd like us to be in their locale.
So just to circle back on that, the way that I remember that is that in the press release, we would publish both the December, January, and February dates in the press release. And if you'd like to host us in March or going forward, please contact us.
So the first 3 would be here.
Yes, and in
Okay.
the middle of those 3 would be sort of the recreation of the town hall. Here we are a year later. Blah, blah, blah.
Would that one have a programming element or same format of all 3 meetings?
That one would have a programming element.
Okay.
Is that what you guys were thinking too?
Yeah, I think we decided that, there will be some type of format because, if we only have 1 or 2 people show up, we still want to be able to listen, to educate, to share, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So just so you guys know, I have Lou on Zoom here on my laptop.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah, tell them I'm sorry. I can't get it back without restarting everything. So.
Lou, can you hear us all right?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
We can.
Good. Again, sorry for droning on, but I'm not sure how much you heard. What I was trying to get across is that the community has seen these sorts of activities and initiatives by the borough before. And my sensitivity to their want for action is acute. So whatever we do, and I'm not saying we don't do the things that we discussed, we certainly do. A lot of folks say, yeah, we talk a good game, but then nothing ever happens. We meet hours a day. So I would just like to emphasize that whatever we do, there has to be an actionable component. There has to be feedback to the community on that actionable component or components. It doesn't necessarily mean solving everybody's problem, making everybody happy. You can't really legislate attitude and a bunch of other things that are the problem and a part of the problem here. But certainly gaining the confidence of the community, these types of endeavors, this commission and endeavors that follow, are going to be effective in moving the ball forward. And it's very much to be with the messaging which you all discussed, and you know very well, communicating, linking the communities which have been de-linked, and seeing something tangible and actionable at the end, rather than simply discussion, rah-rah, to the next problem or to the next political administration or whatever. So I just wanted to get that in. I do think the research group, I can see, is focused on something actionable, and that's good. Not to say that the community engagement group is not, but part of that engagement message has got to be that we are seeking to accomplish something that is actionable in the end, even if an individual's case or circumstance cannot be immediately ameliorated. If that makes sense.
It does. I think, Lou, while you were away, we had talked a little bit about how to wrap this piece of the agenda up and what some next steps might look like. And I might have been too busy trying to connect with you to hear what was said. So I'm gonna let them recap that.
Lou, I sometimes just recap for my own mental organization and for our trustee Nicole, because that is a hard job. I have been the secretary of many bodies. So I just confirmed that there was consensus around the idea of titling the event with race in the title, to clearly signal to the public that it would be about race primarily, and that we're going to stick with December 9th as the target date for the first event, with the understanding that the press release will be shared with the whole commission via email. So just confirming those two things so we're all on the same page.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Anything else for the community group?
Just a clerical thing. Are we making it on the?
I have the internet back if he wants to get back on.
Oh, I like the close up though.
Maybe too late.
Should the contingency be though that everyone approves of the
Just kidding.
press release wording?
I think a simple majority is probably fine, unless others disagree. Suppose somebody is on vacation that week, and you can't get one person's approval because they're in the Caribbean.
Can't vote.
May-
True.
yeah. Maybe the thing that we should do is say if you have objections of a certain sort, voice them by a particular date.
Yeah, I didn't mean to use that legalistic language of majority. Just saying, check in with everybody. If there's somebody you don't hear from because they have an away message, I don't think that any offense will be taken that you moved on without their feedback.
I agree.
It's not a vote.
And just a quick question, so that those of us who are, do we have an idea about when we might expect the information to be sent around, so that we can kind of look out for emails?
Well, we didn't start drafting it yet because we came to this meeting looking for some consensus on to begin drafting it. So I may or may not have reached out to Stephanie already to see if we can get something moving this week, so I can update by the end of the week, if nothing else.
Okay.
Anything else?
I just want to say I appreciate the discussion tonight. This has been one of our more spirited discussions, and I think that's how we get things accomplished, as we go back and forth and listen. And so I just wanted to say I really appreciate hearing everyone's points of view, and good job tonight.
Hear, hear.
Oh, you took the words out.
Brain share. All right, are we ready to move on to new business? Yep. Okay.
Oh,
Tawanda, yeah, you're on.
well, so we have borough email addresses. I think Kevin has set up everyone's had that meeting. I know Tristan did. So we have those, and a part of that includes, I want to call it SharePoint, but it might not be SharePoint. It's something else. OneDrive, I think, or something like that. So sometime between now and the next meeting, everything that we have, I think we would do well. It would save us trouble, I think, to move things over to that and begin to use that for our main source of communication. Of course, Lou has not met with Kevin yet, so that's still in the works. So we have some ramp up time, I think, between now and the next meeting for all of that to take place. But we'll want to start doing that just to save ourselves some stuff.
Roger that. Thank you.
Lou, I'm sorry. Did Kevin get in touch with you yet? I think that just started today.
Yes, not yet, but I did get an email that he will be reaching out. Yes, thank you.
Okay. You just want to keep us updated on that progress. That way we can shift over sort of in response to how quickly he can get that done for you.
Sure, I will. Thank
Okay, thanks.
All right, we are ready to move on to the public comment portion of the meeting. Would our member of the public or anyone on Zoom care to make a comment? Yes? Great, please.
Yes.
Please do, and share your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Wanda Hunter, and I live at 234 Walnut Bottom Road. First of all, I wanted to welcome Blue Waterball back to the community of Carlisle. As a native Carlinian, I'm familiar with the background of the Waterball family, so welcome back and looking forward to working with you in the borough. And just a date to mark on your calendars, December 7th, from 7 until 8:30, it will be virtual. Not in Our Town, Carlisle presents What Can We Do About Hate? Bias Incidents and Hate Crimes, Community Responders and Prevention. Featuring keynote speaker Ann Van Dyke, former civil rights investigator for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and local representative from the Carlisle Human Relations Commission, the Greater Carlisle Community Responders Network, and Not in Our Town. A flyer will be sent since your email addresses are available on the website. I will see that you all get a copy of the flyer. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody on Zoom, Stephanie?
I don't have Zoom.
Okay, well.
It's still on. Still 11.
Okay. Now we're on to announcements and future meeting schedule.
Next meeting, Monday, December 13th, 2021 at 6 p.m. right here at Borough Hall.
Any announcements?
We touched on it a little bit earlier, but Tristan's been, I don't have my, Tristan's been involved with the group that, I think it's sort of a consortium between Dickinson College, the Historical Society, and there's another piece of that. They're presenting the film Not in Our Town. Nope, that's not the name of it. They're presenting the film Home from School, which deals with the Carlisle Indian School, and there's also a panel discussion planned for that evening. November 18th, and I have that it begins at 6:15. I don't know if that's right. So more information can be shared electronically for those who are interested. That's all I got.
Excellent. Thank you. Well, this was a wonderful meeting. Great to see everyone. With that, we are adjourned, and I promise a non-wimpy gavel pound this time. We're adjourned.
Beautiful.